You've done it. You pulled Hawks. You saw his beautiful, beautiful face and you said, you know what? I need to have him in my collection. I need to see this beautiful bird boy in all his splendor every time I open my character list. But now you have a major problem. You got the hot dude, but you don't know how to use him. And you've heard that he's very complicated, and you don't want to make him look like a scrub. So what do? Well, I'll tell you what you do. You watch my guide. That's why you're here. Otherwise, I don't know how you even watched my really dumb intro to this. This is my Hawks guide. Let's get to it. Hawks is a speed type character that specializes in high damage against single targets. He also builds his ult very quickly, which allows him to use his ult, which is not an attack, but rather a new mode of play called Hawks on High, where he flies into the air and can just absolutely shred enemies. In terms of strengths, big one for Hawks is that he has armor on most of his attacks, which makes it a lot easier to keep him up and building his ult. And once he's in Hawks on High, I don't actually know of anything that can knock him out of it. He has so much ability to just keep the damage going. He has very, very high single target DPS. I think the only character that can beat him is Ida, and even then it depends on the event, because what I've found is that Hawks can hit his damage cap a lot faster than Ida can. And depending on the enemy, Hawks won't get stunned in the same way that Ida will. So for example, if you're doing one of the Stain fights, Hawks has a much easier time not getting knocked around, whereas Ida has some difficulty with that. He also is a character that does a lot of auto combo damage, which means you can use things like Ectoplasm and Unconscious Monster to really crank up his damage. In terms of weaknesses, his big one is dealing with mobs, especially if they're low health mobs. With high health mobs, you can at least focus on one enemy and build your ult charge that way, but if there's a lot of little guys, he'll kind of flounder a bit getting to them and dealing damage. He's meant to focus on one enemy at a time, both on the ground and in the air. He also has his main resource, which is his feathers, and I found that people can get tripped up by that, and it's important to know how he works, when to expend feathers, and when to save them. His mechanism is Fierce Wings, which is his quirk, and it's effectively a resource of feathers. You use feathers to cast your abilities. A lot of abilities have a certain amount of feathers you need to have on hand to cast them. And depending on how many feathers you have on hand and how many you have on the ground, because he will also drop them periodically, this can impact things like damage and crit rate and how quickly you charge ults. A big thing with Hawks is his ability to mark enemies. He does this with his W skill on the ground and his E skill in the air. A marked enemy takes more damage, and a lot of skills will charge your ult faster when an enemy is marked. So it's important to know where to mark enemies and how long a mark lasts. It lasts for 10 seconds, so you want to time everything within that window. In terms of his skills, a lot of his skills will have two forms because he goes into Hawks on High status when he uses his ult. This ult will last longer the more feathers that are on the ground that he picks up, because when he casts his ult, he picks up all the feathers. If you have 10 or more feathers on the ground, he will go for 10 seconds, which is the base level of length, and then he'll gain an additional 10 seconds. He gains an additional second per feather. Therefore, if you have 10 feathers on the ground, he'll be up in the air for 20 seconds. So it's important to make sure you're dropping enough feathers to keep yourself in the air as long as possible. You can drop feathers using his Q, which is Featherstorm. Featherstorm will have his feathers surround him, and when he hits a marked enemy, he gains more ult charge. He will also constantly drop feathers. So one thing to keep in mind is normally he'll regenerate a feather every second or so. He will not do that while he has Featherstorm out. But it's important to drop feathers so that you have a longer ult. His W, as I mentioned, allows you to mark an enemy. It fires one shot straight at an enemy and marks them for 10 seconds. However, this skill has a 15-second cooldown, so you need to make sure that you're attacking as much as you can within that window in order to get the most ult charge out of it. His E has two forms based on whether he's on the air in his Hawks on High status or if he's on the ground. When he's on the ground, it's called Disperse. It will home in on a marked enemy and will also gain more ult off of that as well. So you really don't want to cast it unless you have an enemy marked, because then he'll just fan the attack out in a radius around him. When he's in the air, it becomes Downfall. And in the air, your E is how you mark enemies. You don't have access to W while you're in the air. It will constantly spray feathers in an area and allow you to mark enemies, like I said. So again, it's the same amount of time. It's 10 seconds of marking. On the ground, his auto combo is like a lot of characters. He has like a 4 or 5 hit combo where he'll reel back, rush forward into the air, and then pull back and shoot feathers. The important thing to note with Hawks is if you interrupt his combo when he goes into the air, you can cast spells without actually going back to the ground. And this is important because he has a talent that gives him hyper armor when he's in the air. So generally what you'll do is you will do your auto, you'll cancel into abilities, and then you'll build your ult. When he's in the air, it becomes air combo, and air combo will work best if you hold down the button. If you tap, his DPS will not be nearly as high. His quirk skill is Feather Regeneration. It takes 60 seconds to regenerate, and it lasts for 10. While it is active, you will not expend feathers. You will have max amount of feathers, and none of your skills will cost anything. However, after the 10 seconds are up, all of your feathers will be depleted, and for 8 seconds you won't have feathers, and then you'll get 30 of them back. The note to remember here, though, is if you end your quirk while you're in the air, you do not lose your feathers. So you want to time it so that you can cast your ult before your quirk ends. It's very important to do that because it allows you to manage your feathers. All right, real quick, let's talk about his passives that he gets from his resonance. From his rank A passive, you will increase your crit rate along with how many feathers you have on hand, maxing out at 24%. So this is important to remember. The more feathers you have on hand, the higher your crit rate is, including when you use your quirk to max out your feathers. His S rank just deals more damage to marked enemies. Not much to it, just more damage. His double S is quite good. Every time he picks up a feather, it raises his attack by 6% for 15 seconds up to 15 times. This, as far as I can tell, will reset every single time, so you can constantly juggle it, and it maxes out at 90% extra damage, which is obviously a lot of attack increase. I want to mention his triple S. This allows you to gain 10% ult charge every 10 seconds. I've seen people talk about it as a necessary thing for Hawks, but Hawks can get his ult very, very, very quickly without this. He is not a character you need to wail out on to make him effective. So in general, don't worry about getting a bunch of dupes, but really with Hawks, he does not need his triple S perk. It's really superfluous. And then he has his rainbow perks, raises damage by 30%, raises attack by 36% while on Hawks on high. They're nice, I guess, if you want to wail. I do not recommend wailing. There's a shard shot for a reason. Okay, let's talk about talent, since everybody asks a lot about what talent branches to go for first. I'll make it really quick for you. Pick left first for Hawks. The other two could potentially be up to discretion, but the left one is you have to pick it. You want the last node on this talent tree, which gives him hyper armor and increased attack while in the air. Guess what? When he does his combo, he goes into the air. Anytime he is floating above the ground, and he actually launches himself in the air, both when he uses his ult and when he combos into the air, he gets hyper armor. This is very important, allows you to cast your skills where you won't be interrupted very easily. He also gets a nice little bonus to his attack speed while he's in the air. This does reset, so you can just keep it going. He attacks very, very quickly in the air. After that, I prefer the bottom right path because, one, he gets a cooldown reduction on W when you kill an enemy, which is nice, but he also gets an attack increase for 15 seconds with every hit of E-Disperse up to 60 times. You can max this out to 15 seconds of 60% extra attack when you go into your ult, which is huge. It's very important. However, his top branch is also pretty good. He gets a bonus to ultimate energy if he hits a marked target when he casts his ult, so you get 20% of your ult energy back. And he also gets a nice little bit of extra chance of dropping feathers, which is nice. I would not begrudge anybody that picks top right over bottom, but my preference is left, then bottom right, then top right. Left, there is no question, that is the one you want to pick for him. Let's talk about Hawks and equipment. We'll start with his chipsets, and that also kind of ties into what crystals you want to pick for him. And then we'll get to the fun stuff, which are his cards. His 6-star chipset bonus is Hawkeye, level 3, high chance to restore 1 feather when E skill hits a marked enemy. The max number of fallen feathers allowed on the fields is increased to 15. This is just good. Picking up feathers allows him to get more damage and more attack. Being able to restore feathers is also very good. It's a good chip bonus. In terms of chip stats to pursue, like most characters, in fact, I don't know if there's an exception to this, you want to go with his typing first, so you go with speed. And then after that, it's kind of up to you. He does have a natural increase to crit rate with his, I believe it's his rank A passive. So it just make sure you're picking some mixture of damage increase, crit, and penetration. I kind of prefer just damage increase so that you're getting an overall bump to damage even if it's not a crit. And then crit damage. I'd put crit lower just because he does have a naturally higher crit rate, and therefore you're not getting quite as much, but really it's just focus on speed first and then pick a consistent theme to your damage to really build around. For example, if you want to put Cold Shot on him, having a higher crit damage is better than a higher crit rate, because then you're getting the crit rate increase from Cold Shot as well as the crit rate increase that Hawks has from his passive, which will kind of combo nicely. But if you get crit, that's also positive for him as well. So really focus on speed, and then just damage is what he wants. His EX support cards, let's start there. So his EX card is actually pretty good. I don't personally have it. I don't really focus that much on getting EX cards for most characters unless they really, really need it, and Hawks has enough general cards to get use out of. But if you have it, it is good. It gives him 1% up to 3% if you really max him out. Attack increase for 1 second while on Hawks on high status for each air combo hit up to 24 times. Now, I can't confirm this because I don't have the card to test, but most skills I've found will just reset the timer on these things, so you can get that 24% very quickly and very easily. He attacks very rapidly when he's in the air. So it is good because you will be able to probably within a few seconds get up to a 24% higher attack value while you're in your ult, and your ult is where you do most of your damage. So it is good. In terms of active cards, he is not a character that really needs any particular card. Like a lot of characters, he can benefit from things like the Endeavor active card or All Might or Kamui Woods in terms of like binding someone, allowing him to hit them more, build more ult, but it's not necessary. Personally, I like to use Rhodey in combination with Toga so that I have the ability to increase damage when I go into ult, and then I can do a high damage attack. But you don't need to do that, so it's kind of up to you. I just like it because I use my active cards to kind of time myself when I'm in my ult, because after you cast your first active card, it takes 7 seconds for the next one to come up, and I use that to drop my E downfalls and kind of time how long I'm marking an enemy. But you can do that with any active card. It's just something to note for him. Okay, in terms of his passive cards, I have kind of a hot take here, but we'll get to it in a second. So, number one for Hawks, I don't think anyone would question this, it's Mastermind. You want to build your ult as fast as possible. Hawks easily gets the most out of his ult out of any character in the game. I think that maybe you could say somebody like Ida does, but he doesn't need to charge it faster. Hawks gets the most out of his ult and the most out of casting his ult as often as he can. Another card that's good for him that I like a lot is the Head of Humorize card. I think that Hawks is Probably the best character to use this on. I know that you can definitely get use out of this card depending on the character you're using, but because Hawks is in the air during his ult, it's very hard for the CPU to hit him. Therefore, you're able to keep the shield active and really get a lot of extra damage out of him. Another great card for him is Ectoplasm. He, again, attacks with his auto combo a lot. It's his main damage tool when he's in the air. And you're able to just proc Ectoplasm over and over and over and over again and get just a ton of extra damage for him. And it's similar for something like Cold Shot. You're attacking so rapidly, you can get Cold Shot to proc very, very often. You can also get that for Unconscious Monster as well, but I rank that a little bit lower than the 4 preceding as well as Game Start. Game Start's great for anybody, increases penetration rate. But Unconscious Monster, it has so much utility in terms of giving hyper armor to characters that don't have it. And it doesn't give that big of an attack boost. Ectoplasm gives a bigger overall attack boost. But Unconscious Monster, unless you're really deep whaling, you're not going to just have a ton of unconscious monsters to throw around. So I wouldn't recommend putting that on Hawks. But if you need it for like a DPS challenge, it is good. It just gives him more attack, and he can definitely make use of that. It's just the hyper armor isn't a big deal for Hawks. Another good card is Combat Fist, which is essentially the kid version of Cold Shot. It does work pretty well. So here's my hot take. I don't think Dance with the Wind is that great on Hawks, and I'll explain why. It's good, to be clear. I'm not saying it's a bad card for Hawks. It's just when I compare it to Ectoplasm, to Mastermind, to Head of Humorize, to Cold Shot, to Game Start, and Unconscious Monster, all of those are going to more consistently add to Hawks' damage. Now, it could be I don't have this card and I'm looking at the stats of it and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in practice this does a ton. But you can get Ectoplasm's second form to proc so often, and it's a 5-star card. You can break through it to level 3 so much easier than just getting even one copy of Dance with the Wind. On top of that, Dance with the Wind only lasts 10 seconds. If you're playing Hawks right, you'll be in your ult for 20 seconds, which means that you will cast your ult, have 10 seconds where you can use it, and then it's not doing anything for half of your ult. Whereas Ectoplasm can be reprocced and reset, so can Unconscious Monsters, so can Cold Shot. I actually don't know what character Dance with the Wind is like an excellent pick for. I do. World Hero Mission Midoriya is a good pick for it. But in terms of Hawks, it's a decent pick, but it's not one I would put over the cards I use. And the cards I use are Mastermind, Head of Humorize, Ectoplasm, and Cold Shot. Okay, we're in training mode. I'm going to kind of demo how he works in actual gameplay and what you need to look out for. The first thing that I'll show you is this is his full auto combo. There you go. Goes up in the air, comes back down, shoots a bunch of feathers. In general, you're not going to do the full combo. You're going to go up into the air and then cancel into one of your skills. You'll open with W to mark an enemy, then you'll do E to hit the enemy with all of your feathers, and then you'll do Q to bring up your shield. Well, it's not a shield, but your little feathers surrounding you. In general, with Q, you're not going to recast it because what it'll do is it'll suck up all your feathers on the ground. You want those feathers on the ground when you cast your ult. Your ult lasts longer depending on how many feathers are on the ground. Your E will home in, like I mentioned, and it will refill your ult based on hitting a marked target. You want to hit marked targets with them. So that's really the combo. And then once you're in the air, you'll mark them with E, and then you'll just attack. There's really not much else to do in the air, but this will do so much damage. And as you can see, my active cards are just proccing over and over and over and over and over again because it just deals so much damage. And then that's what it looks like when you're not targeting an enemy that's marked. So let's do a little DPS test and see how that goes. So again, do the combo into the air. We'll cancel into W, into E, into Q, into E again, and then usually I'll activate my quirk to kind of max out, and there we go, we already have our ult. So we cast our ult on a marked enemy to hopefully get extra ult charge off of one of the talents, and then we activate Rhodey, and then 7 seconds later we activate our other active card, and that kind of allows you to time when to cast your next E. And then usually, I'm used to using Hawk, so I'm like, and about now. is a good time to cast. You just kind of want to extend how long you have a target marked. And there you go, he's already back into his ult. And then you do it again. That's really all there is to it. Hawks is very easy to use once you understand how he works. And he can do just an insane amount of damage. And then that's it. I have found so much success with this character. So yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. I guess one thing I can do real quick is we'll kind of go over the various modes in the game and kind of where he fits there. So we'll just do that real quick on the fly. In general, he's very good at modes that require you to take down bosses, which is most of the game, to be clear. So in agency assessment, in hub, he's going to do very well there because he's going to do okay against the mobs if you understand how he works and how to do damage with him. But when he gets to bosses, he will just kick off like crazy. In terms of like PvP modes, in Arena, I'd characterize him in the like A tier. Like he's not up there with like Aizawa and like Stain and like World Hero Mission Bakugo in my eyes, but he's still very good. He's very annoying, I will say. I don't play him personally, but I get why people do. However, in Warzone and Scoop, do not put him in there. He is terrible in those modes. He can't use his ult. The AI is really dumb with Hawks. It's not a good scene. In terms of like the rotating timed events, he's good at all of them because they're all focused around hitting bosses. I would say that the virtual battleground is one that he's only really great on in like the last stage because a lot of times your other characters will be able to kill in the like 5 seconds you have a bit faster. But like against Stain, he does so much better than Ida because it's very easy for Hawks to not be interrupted, whereas Ida, I've just had him be knocked on his ass so many times. Boss Raid is one that is still dominated by Ida, but Hawks can do very well, and especially if you've really focused on kitting him out, he'll do very well. And then Mock Contest, when it's speed typing, I outdamaged the Idas in my server. It kind of depends on the boss. Some bosses are better against Ida, some are better against Hawks. It's really up to that. But you won't regret putting time into Hawks because he will give it back and then some. So yeah, that's my guide. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know a character that you want me to talk about later, and if I'm any good at them, I will try and give my, I wouldn't say expertise, my anal retentive knowledge because I play the game too much. Okay, bye.